Security people who watch cams, what is the most bizarre thing you've ever witnessed? Several years ago, I worked in a hospital that had a secure wing for mentally ill / at risk patients. It had cameras all over the hall and in every room. It was also a co-ed ward, which was a terrible idea. We had one guy, let's call him RJ, who had been there a while and was missing certain things he was used to getting from his lady friend on the regular. RJ was also a paranoid schizophrenic and would hallucinate famous people following / talking to him. On this particular day, Halle Berry was following him around and they were going to get married as soon as he was discharged. Lots of my girl Halle is hungry. Can I get an extra sandwich? And damn, Halle, you so fine girl, directed to the wall. Well, it's dinner time and RJ gets his plate and goes to his room and comes back out a second later and asks the nurse for mayonnaise. Whatever, she gives him mayonnaise. RJ goes back to his room, takes the ham from his sandwich, opens the mayonnaise, spreads it on one side of meat, and, please forgive me for this, beats his meat with it. So we pop a sticky note on the screen for modesty and keep giving out food. Then we hear it, Halle. Oh Halle. Oh girl. Yes. Get it. You like that, don't you? That's my Halle. I love you baby. Go. We all turn and look at the monitor just in time for RJ to do the Sexorcist-esque arch right as he blew his load, which rendered the strategically placed sticky note useless. Then he got up, and RJ was a tall dude, but he got up and smeared a handful of mayo cum directly on the camera and yelled, "You'll don't get to see me with my girl unless you pay," at which point he walked out of his room and dropped the half-empty mayonnaise packet on the service window at the nurse's station and said, "Y'all can give the rest to somebody else." Was on the opposite end of this. Worked at a fairly big company. I used a scooter to move around the tile floor building while fixing things from room to room. Well, one day, most of the employees were in a big meeting room meeting about something. I just so happened to need to go into that room to restart a switch. Now I was really good at drifting corners on said scooter and had made a habit of doing this around corners. Yeah I know. Well, unbeknownst to me, not only were they having a meeting in said room, there was also water spilled right in front of the room. So right as I drifted around the corner, I hit the water and of course lost control and absolutely slammed into a metal industrial fan they had at the entrance. It was faking loud and of course I caused the whole meeting to stop mid whatever they were talking about. The head presenter saw the whole thing and was doubled over from laughing. Most everyone else was just confused. Q 2 weeks later, I get asked to come help set up something which broke right during our meeting. I show up to the same room with the same people. As soon as I walk in, the seer/owner pops open the video footage on the projector for everyone to see. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty damn funny. Edit. For all those asking, I unfortunately do not have a copy of the video anywhere I know of. I think I was given a copy on a flash drive, but this was many years ago, and I have lost track of it. I honestly have been kicking myself over that for a while. I will try and find it in my boxes of sheet if I get time. Also, it wasn't like a highly important meeting. Apparently it's just a bi-weekly meeting the company has, nor was it a huge company or anything. Maybe 100 total employees. Everyone thought it was hilarious, so yeah, that was fortunate. Only downside was the janitor finally figured out where all the streak marks on the tile were coming from. I work weekends at a hospital for a security company with hundreds of cameras all over the hospital. I frequently am assigned to be the officer who watches cameras in the rooms of patients under observation, threats to self or nursing staff, and have access to the files in our archives. The most bizarre thing I have ever seen in the archives is one of the patients under observation escaping security and making it all the way to his car completely naked. This guy was admitted for reasons that I have only heard secondhand. He was young, maybe mid-20s, and looked normal compared to most of the psychiatric patients that come into the most likely delusional and a danger to himself. But the key to his story was that he came to the hospital for help with his problems, but did not know that by telling us that he was suicidal, that a doctor would order him under observation and he would be unable to leave the hospital whenever he wished. Now the process of getting care for mental health issues in an emergency room can take hours because the specialized staff are off-site and only one is present on campus at any given time. He decided that he could not wait and that coming to the ER was a mistake, so he decided to escape. However, this particular patient was smarter than your average case. He took note of the cameras, the angles of each one, and watched the other patients nearby intently as they were escorted by security to a completely stripped, special bathroom. As the security guard in the small room that joined with his and a few other patients' rooms opened a door to the adjacent hall where the bathroom was located, the guard would immediately turn his or her attention to the other patients. Next to the bathroom was another observation room, but that guard was usually seated. Both of these officers, he seemed to gather from the smirk on his face, were not allowed, under any circumstance, to leave their post unless removed. Anyone running from this officer would have a huge head start before a free officer could be summoned over the radio. All he had to do was get out of reach of the nearest one, and they would not be able to follow. There was one problem. The bathroom door opened up toward the seated guard in the hallway. Apparently he had devised a solution to this problem and asked the first guard to use the bathroom. Everything goes as planned from his point of view. Guard #1 opens the door, lets him walk into the hall, and then goes back to the other patients. Guard #2 remains seated and watches to make sure he actually goes in. He is in the bathroom for almost 10 minutes, and the guard in the hall notices, but doesn't change anything about his routine. While the patient was in the bathroom, no camera, he stripped completely naked and lubed up his entire body in a thick layer of hand soap and water. The now fully lubricated patient, I imagine, took a deep breath and flung open the door as hard as he could. The camera files show the seated guard almost falling back out of his rolling chair in surprise. He hadn't even come to terms with the fact that he was going to have to grab a curiously shiny naked man when the man made 5 long strides down the hall at full speed and turned the corner toward the waiting room. The patients in the waiting room just froze in shock, and the guards by the entrance/exit started running toward him. Half a dozen nurses and half a dozen security guards grabbed at him with gloved hands, but every single one of them came up with nothing. None of them could get in front of him, and any attempt to grab the lubed up streaker failed. Some guards were holding their heads, mouthing what the fuck, and others were in full sprint after him. He made it in under 30 seconds out of the hospital and out to the sidewalk that lead to the parking garage. He made it all the way to his car, but no further, no keys. TLDR. Naked patient under observation lubes up entire body in bathroom and slips away from security and sprints through the air to his car, but he didn't have his keys. That was certainly the most bizarre, but I have seen a number of other things on the cameras. A patient just snapping and bashing a security guard's head against a door frame and spilling his blood all over the floor. The Super Bowl pointed at a waiting area TV. A woman taking a staple out of a book binding, pricking her wrist in a suicide attempt. A man on bath salts who came in with his girlfriend's finger in his mouth screaming in agony because he thought the staff were aliens trying to wrap him. A man dropped off in the lobby who bled out in seconds from a stabbing wound. A dead patient on heroin in a stretcher coming back to life flailing like a zombie. 100s of nurses flirting with doctor/male nurses. Nurses with dying patients checking Instagram. Good cameras. A suicide. Archive. A 150 lb 5 feet 7 inches. Security guard taking down a 6 feet 4 inches 250 plus pounds patient. Dozens of old people falling on their way out of the hospital after being treated for falling. Note, wheelchairs are always offered. Oh man, I got some doozies. Got a few years under my belt doing this, so let's go. Watched a guy knock an automatic sliding door completely off the track because he was too busy looking at his phone. Had to call in a tech to fix it. Watched another guy try and steal a spinner of sunglasses just to misjudge which automatic door opened and slammed into it, sending glasses flying, faking everywhere. He got away with the fixture and maybe 4 pairs of glasses. Watched one chick pull out a pair of bolt cutters out of her purse to cut the security wire on some handbags. She cut 2 wires and ran off with 4 bags. She got caught later that afternoon. I watched a poor old lady stop in front of the escalator briefly, and when she moved there was a brown spot on the floor. She started to sheet herself and tracked it up the escalator and halfway across the store to the bathroom. When she got done and came out of the bathroom, she continued shopping like nothing happened. Our store was S biohazard for the rest of the day. I got a lot more of these. If you guys want them, point at it. Got more point. Watched a girl buy a gumball from our machine. Proceeded to chew it and stick it to a dress, then go back to her mom. Once we confronted her about it, she replied, "I didn't do that." We told her we had it on camera and she changed it to "I shouldn't have done that." Turns out her mom just told her not to buy a gumball and was livid. She immediately stopped what she was doing and left with daughter in tow and told us she'd handle it at home. Never saw them again. Point was closing one night, and when we went to roll down the blast door, a giant 3-foot snake fell out of it. Luckily it was already dead. No one believed us till we played the footage. I've watched people come in, purposefully damage merchandise, then point it out to an employee and try and buy it at a discount. Point watched one chick take $800 plus worth of merchandise into a fitting room and came out with a full shopping bag. When she tried to leave, she ran into someone she knew and decided to wander the store for an hour with them before attempting to leave again. Point watched a guy pop the curb in his 4x4 truck and drive all the way to the doors so his wife could hop out and run in since it was raining. Point people are weird, man. Bonus. Probably the worst thing I saw was a female employee full out, hands down the pants, scratch her junk. Then she reversed and did the same to her anus. Guess both sides were itchy. But wait, there's more. She then sniffed her hand and then, drum roll, licked her fingers. You ever laugh so hard you can't breathe but you're gagging at the same time? Then one time we had a dude jack off onto a rack of Fubu, which speaks for itself. Best/funniest case I ever made was a dude who grabbed $1,300 worth of high-end clothes on Christmas Eve and ran out. We got a call right as he was leaving and just took off running. Point get out to the parking lot. There's a 50-yard line of clothes and 2 large guys standing over top of one guy who's screaming about his legs. My buddy and I look at each other like, what the fuck? Thought maybe these 2 customers chased him down and beat him. Go back and watch the outside video. Guy runs out past these 2 with a mound of gear. Sure enough, they chase. Getaway vehicle, a minivan with the sliding door open, comes barreling up next to him. Guy can't really see it well. The clothes pile is high. He's shedding clothes to see and knows these guys are gaining. Point suddenly our perp stumbles, falls, and the van runs him the fuck over. Beautiful. Point edit. Yeah, the guy lived. A family friend that had a huge house hired me to house sit for them. They just wanted me to feed their dogs, fish, and cut the grass once or twice and generally make it look like someone was home. The first night they asked me to stay over at their home for the night because the house across the street was going to have a big party, so they made me watch the outside, patio, garage and other cameras. I had brought my laptop and was playing Garry's Mod while glancing every so often. A bright light from the pool cam catches my attention and it's 2 sorority girls with sparklers making out on the deck. Seriously, what the fuck? I grabbed the big mag light they gave me to use and yelled the girls away. They were giggling drunkly and I didn't see anything else for the rest of the time. Point edit. To the people who keep insisting I should have faked the sorority girls. No. Here's why. Point they were drunk and therefore couldn't consent properly. Point everything was on camera and it was a busy street, increasing the chance that one of the neighbors would tell the homeowner. My mind is not as focused on sex as you might think. Just because I'm an angsty and horny teenager doesn't mean I don't have standards. The girls were sketchy and STDs could have been an issue. Pregnancy would have been likely. If I had been caught, the girls would have been arrested for statutory rape, as I was under the age of consent. Point if caught, I would lose face with my parents and the homie Arwana, meaning I couldn't talk to his hot daughter, so please, fuck off. My time to shine. I'm a security monitor for a tech company. We monitor alarms and cameras for our buildings across the whole globe. Here's a few that stand out to me. Panic alarm received from Shanghai. Upon launching footage, I can see a group of people on one side of a glass door, and on the other side, some dude trying to light something with a lighter. They're all holding the door shut to prevent this guy from gaining access. Eventually one of our security guards goes through the door and gets in a scuffle, at which point he was stabbed twice by this guy. Blood everywhere. He managed to apprehend the dude anyway. The assailant had just gotten fired and was looking for revenge. Several door alarms somewhere in San Francisco. Some naked guy somehow managed to get into the building and was rolling around on the floor, sheeting everywhere. Notified of a vehicle accident. Rolled back the footage to watch a guy on a motorcycle get run over by a bus and die. It's July 4th. Door alarm received and I was somewhere. Notice that there's authorized personnel in the area. No big deal. Sometimes these happen if the door wasn't opened smoothly. Let's roll back the footage and, yeah, there's the receptionist getting mailed by some guy on the desk. Took him about 2 minutes. I've seen all sorts of stuff. Dude's vape exploded in his hand. Girl jumped off a balcony and died. Black bears. Guy got severely injured when a glass door shattered as he opened it. Yeah. The world can be gnarly. I've got 2 decent ones. This is at our backup data center in the suburbs in a commercial office park. Dead quiet, no one is ever there. Cops mostly chill in the parking lot to sleep basically. During lunch this one guy parks in back and start eating his lunch. Then the door opens. He runs in back of the truck, runs back to the door to grab the bag from his lunch, drops his pants and lets loose a torrent of diarrhea. She just explodes in the middle of the parking lot. There was no way those pants remained unscathed. Then he wipes scissors with his lunch bag. What lunch did you have, you might ask? It was from Portillo's. Personally, I love Portillo's. That bag did not deserve that fate it was given. This was amazing video and captivated the entire staff of like 50 for at least an hour of reruns. Another time, we hired a cleaning service to clean that same office. Dude shows up in a really shitty car, like 18 years old, parks in back. He then pulls out a giant bong and goes to town for about 10 minutes. We are watching this and laughing and we call up our man on site, and when this kid comes inside to work, we ask our employee, hey, what's he smell like? So we called up the firm that sent him. It's a small business. Our guy knows the owner actually. So we are listening to this one side of the conversation. It goes like this. Hey Bob, so the cleaning guy showed up. Yeah, he's here. Hey, let me ask you something. Do you know this guy really well? OHH. He's your son? Well, this is awkward. I work at a hospital as a security officer. We have a large number of cameras, most of them in hallways and at the exits. There's this one camera that monitors the entrance to our and another that monitors the hallway just beyond it, leading to respiratory therapy and the /CCS charge nurse office. It's empty most of the time and out of sight of the people in the anyway. I try not to let anything I see at work get to me, but I saw something a little while ago that really impacted me. We had a young man be brought in. He was in an accident and in really bad shape. His family was just outside the entrance, a whole group of people pacing, worrying, wondering, and hoping. I always watch when something like this is happening, because family members with potentially dying loved ones are not always rational, understandably so, and sometimes I need to step in to keep everything civil. I had my eye on them while the nursing staff worked on this young man, and one family member stood out to me in particular. His father stood, stony and silent. I could see him occasionally hug and console crying people. He was really helping to keep everyone together. You could tell. When the doctor came out, you could tell the patient had passed away. Everyone reacted to the news very visibly. The whole time, he kept it together, hugging and consoling people, talking to them, all without breaking. One by one, he saw them all off, until it was him and his wife. He held his wife for a while she cried, and then she went outside to smoke, and he didn't follow. He stared at a wall for a while, and then slowly trudged away from the entrance, into the hall, and around the corner, out of view of everyone. Everyone but me. He leaned against the wall, his shoulders began to heave, and he collapsed, alone at last, not needing to be strong for anyone, and he wept for his boy. Stolen from the last time this was asked, original comment account since deleted. Oh, I actually have something. I worked as an AV guy, not security, but sometimes the homeowners would want us to incorporate their security into their control system. Brand new build of a $2 million home. Marble, hand carved wood, massive pool, beautiful home. I get a call from the mom. to stop by and check on something, and she very discreetly pulls me aside and asks if there is any way to save data on it and delete what's there. I say sure and show her how on her tablet. Next day she says she can't get it and needs help. Her husband is there too. They're really cool, funny, down to earth people. But she gives me a heads up. They were out of town and someone came to visit. She didn't want to delete it entirely in case she needed it again for court, but decided not to press trespassing charges. And you could tell she really didn't want to explain what happened. She knew who the girl was, and the girl's dad actually came and apologized. Anyway, she tells me to find the time frames, save the info, and delete it. So I'm looking with my coworker and the husband. At first, he left soon after we started, and this girl and guy walk up to the pool, start making out for like 30 minutes. Then they walk to the end of the pool, strip down, and start having sex on the side of the pool. BJ, 69. Then full on sex. Then they crawl into the pool and keep going. It was like a 2-hour session of sex. And super awkward to have running, while I try to get the time's most awkward thing ever, to have to sit through with strangers and back up, and give them over TLDR. Random acquaintance of homeowner sneaks onto their property, and has lots of sex in pool. I had to watch the footage, back up the video, and delete from security system. There is a small stairwell that leads to an underground entrance on the exterior of the building I guard. The entrance is closed at night, and it gets pretty sketchy. Needless to say, it is the most active camera angle on my CCTV station, frequented by addicts and crazies alike. So one night, summer of 2017, I'm at my post doing the usual desk duties stuff, when the movement on the CCTV catches my eye. I see an addict that does his heroin and crack in this little space all the time. This time he's acting more weird than usual. He's pacing the length of the doorway and rocking back and forth on his feet. It was kind of unsettling. I'm supposed to go and shoo these people away, but usually if I'm on the night shift I'll let them finish their business and carry on themselves. Don't get paid enough. So this guy eventually drops his pants and begins to furiously masturbate, facing the camera. At this point I just can't look away. Next he takes a belt, wraps it around his wiener, and continues to wear it away. After about 5 minutes of this, he takes out his little kit and cooks up a batch of something and fills up his hypo. He then proceeds to stick himself in the dick with the needle. My only guess was he was trying to find a vein, hence the furious whacking. I literally watched a junkie inject some junk into his junk. I wish I was joking. I have more stories. Not really bizarre, more completely childish, but a security camera saved my job. I was working the register in a gas station as a teen, and we had these blank credit cards for companies with accounts that always stayed in the register. One was for a towing company, and it was used frequently. The other was for the city, and in 4 years I'd never had anyone use it. One day, a guy in a city fire department car came in, saying that he was told they had an account. I asked if it was the city account, and he just shrugged and said, "I don't know. I was just told we had an account." I was a little concerned that he may have gotten the wrong station, since there was another station across the street, so I asked the night supervisor if he knew who was supposed to be able to use that card. He didn't really know anything about it, and after a minute of umming and ahhing about it, he finally said that it was probably the right card and he'd take responsibility if it wasn't. Sounded good to me, so I told the guy to fill up. He came in and signed the docket, and that was that point. I had the next 2 days off, and when I came back, one of the mechanics was like a giddy teenager, saying, "Ooh, wait until you hear what happened while you were away." I had no idea what he was talking about, so I asked the manager. It turns out that the firefighter guy came into the station on my day off with the fire chief, claiming that I didn't want to let him use the account because he was black, and that I used all kinds of racial slurs. I could not believe my ears, because that couldn't be further from the truth. Fortunately, those security cameras had recently been installed, and the guy clearly didn't realize that there was a microphone as well. My manager took both the guy and the fire chief into his office and showed them the video. From what I'm told, the chief then borrowed his very much not soundproof office and chewed the guy a new one. I have no clue what that guy's motivation was, suing the station, maybe, but I'm forever a big fan of security cameras in businesses. First point, not weird, just stupid. Working in retail, him in the office counting money. Look up at the cameras to see the new guy chugging a Pepsi can. Guy had opened a 4-pack, drank one, then set the 3-pack back on the shelf. Manager happened to see him, but doesn't have proof, so asks me, listen, I hate a snitch, but I also hate being in sheet with my boss. Anyway, guy got fired. The worst part is he didn't even go for a cold drink. Nope, warm Pepsi from a 4-pack. Not a fridge Pepsi or even just a single can from the shelf. A faking 4-pack. Faking idiot. Second point, we had these two foreign guys come into the store regularly. Always had something to return, or were pointing out defects in property and wanting it reduced for that. Sketchy dudes. I got some major slip in Jimmy vibes off them. So one day they come in, and I decide, fuck it, I'll go to the office and watch these guys on the cams. Long story short, both of them would grab an item such as a kettle. One would open Fizz and badly damage it. The other would go and put Fizz near the door. Broken guy would go and ask for a reduction in price for the broken one and buy it for 50% off. He'd then walk to the door and give it to the other guy and take the good one out instead, giving them a prime condition item for 50% plus off. Sometimes they'd return it moments later when cashiers changed. It was honestly faked. I ended up making a big profile piece on them with CCTV timestamps and got our manager to bar them both. No doubt they're doing this at some other store though. I could give you 1,000 examples of stealing. Just blatant as fuck. My favorite was African women shoving endless amounts of sheet up their skirts. They must have a bloody shelf up there. Also mothers hitting their kids. Just right in the middle of the store. Have some self-control, jeez. Used to work as loss prevention, what some other companies call asset protection, at a high-end retail store. This chain is known for their needless markup on merchandise. Worked there for years. Can confirm. Anyone who's worked these kinds of jobs knows how boring it can be sometimes. But I did get some enjoyment from dumb people doing dumb things. Some highlights. Group of kids going down the escalator. One of the kids, trying to impress his friends I guess, gets on the rubber handrail and kind of hangs his torso over it looking back at his friends. As the escalator continues down, the back of his head hits the metal handrail protecting shoppers from falling to the bottom floor. For a second I was worried he might have been seriously hurt and was about to run out to check on him and get ready to call 911, but soon see he's just fine. Just really embarrassed in front of his friends who now are all laughing at him. Don't mess around on escalators, people. They are seriously potentially dangerous things. Plenty of NSFW videos out there of escalators vs people. Spoiler, metal and gears when we had an elevator for shoppers. It's not hard to find, easy accessible. I will never understand parents who try to bring strollers, usually with the kid in their arms, on our escalator. Well, a couple one time brought their stroller on the escalator. This couple did not take the kid out first. You guessed it, kid fell out of the stroller on the escalator step. Don't worry, kid was fine, just a small scrape on its head. Though it did have to continue living with parents who don't have a firm grasp on how gravity works. So good luck with that. Dude one time tipped over a seat he was on. Perfectly stationary, and he didn't have a medical issue that caused it. Just didn't know how to use a seat. Cosmetics department was known in the LP office for having, let's say, not exceptionally bright employees. Too many eye-roll inducing things to list, but the one thing that happened every day was employees on their company issued phones for the purposes of better communication with their clients, constantly ignoring customers in store. Oh well, sorry for the long post, but this question really brought up memories from a job that I considered making my career in before I realized it was dead end for that particular company, and retail is the absolute worst. I have worked security for 10 years, so I have a couple of stories. I work at a hotel. A couple of clients really wanted a midnight snack at 3 AM, so they decided in their drunken states to hijack the big nacho machine on the lobby bar. I noticed them and let my partner know, who then proceeded to take the machine out from their hands. We had some kind of football team in the hotel. All young and muscular and kind of hot. Don't judge. I'm a woman who has eyes. I was behind the cameras and noticed that one group of guys on 20th floor are holding the elevator doors open and proceed to do a naked stand on their hands. Then I noticed that all of them wore only towels. Holding in my laughter, I decided to save myself to go over there in person and proceeded to use the elevator intercom to warn them that they have been spotted and they better get some clothes on in their rooms, which they did. Unfortunately, the faces on them was priceless XD. I have a colleague who always ends up being on shift when there is a call for a naked woman in the hallways. His only complaint is that they are too old and the view is blinding him. Years ago, one drunk hotel guest could not find his bathroom, which is in the room, mind you, in the middle of the night. Walked out of his room naked and finds the nearest trash can. Then he just sits on it and does the number 2 right there. It would have been somewhat okay if ended up only inside the trash can, but he was so drunk it was not all inside but outside also. The halls were quite nasty. The cleanup lady was mad as hell. The smell made us almost vomit 15 years ago, or so I've been told. It's before my time. There was this security guy who ended up being in debt. He was addict in the casinos. Since our hotel is 28 stories high, he decided one day, while being at work, to commit suicide by jumping off the roof. He ended up doing it. Half of his body ended up on 3rd floor roof and other half on the street. I might have more, but could not think of any. If anyone is interested, then I might add some later. I did night security for a TV studio. Strangest thing has got to be when I was 10 minutes away from my relief arriving and a heavily inked naked dude, not even socks, sprinted up the driveway and vaulted the traffic barrier. While I'm watching the cameras in disbelief, I step out with cuffs to confront him. Also check I wasn't hallucinating, and he starts frantically saying, "You gotta hide me. They're coming for me." Immediately suspecting he's psychotic, I look down the drive to humor him, and sure enough there are 2 guys coming up, fully clothed, one with a baseball bat. I bundled him straight into my cabin toilet room and locked the door and meet the guys at the gate. They make it plain they're after the naked guy and want me out of the way. I don't much fancy grappling with 2 guys at 6 AM, so I dash back into the cabin and call for backup while they prowl around the car park looking for him, not suspecting he's locked in my toilet. Eventually backup arrives with the police, not believing me about the tattooed naked guy until I show them, and the chasers run for it. They wrap him in a blanket and take him away. Later that day the police come back. Turns out he met a girl at a club and went back to her place, but her boyfriend and his mates catch inked dude balls deep in her, smack him around, and chase him down the street. The police retrieved his clothes and wallet, arrested the boyfriend and his buddies, and took no longer naked dude home. Not cameras, but had to peep through two-way mirrors. Working at a local grocery store in a not so good part of town, people would try to steal anything from family packs of steaks to gum. So sometimes we had to watch suspicious people shopping. Spotting a shoplifter followed the protocol of locking the main door, calling the police, and detaining the shoplifter. As you can imagine, each time was interesting and pure chaos. One time, a guy had started putted packaged steaks down his pants, and one stock boy had saw and initiate protocol. Couple of us cornered the guy, grabbed him and took him to the back until the police came. Was holding him on the back room stairs while we waited for police, and the owner heard about the incident and came down from upstairs. The owner started asking why he thought he could get away with shoplifting, and the guy replied with something like "Fuck you, old man." Immediately after, the owner took his wing-tipped shoe up slowly and kicked this guy right in the face. The shoplifter's head bounced off the stairs. We were all in shock. The guy's pretty much stunned and bleeding from the nose. Thank God the cops showed up into the back by then and handcuffed him and took him out. Shoplifter starts going on about the old guy kicking him in the face. Cops don't care and put him in the back. We all have to go to court months later to testify, and shoplifter is sentenced to 6 months in county. Craziest story from working there, but way more happened there, like the owner trying to make a manager chase a shoplifter down an alley with a revolver after he got out with a family pack of ribeyes. There was a reserved parking sign in an alleyway, tucked into a corner of a building. Two things would happen with this sign every single night. Stay with me, the build up is worth it. Point first, there was your usual drunken attempt to climb it, which inevitably lead to someone falling off, which we would have to send someone out to check if they were injured, inform them it was all on camera, and call for emergency services if necessary. Sometimes the larger people would make it to the top and bend the aluminum post over on the way down. We had to go bend it back, and every month it was replaced because it had broken off completely. Eventually they bolted the pole to the wall, which just encouraged more people to climb it. Point next, occasionally the reserved parking would actually be used, which gave a corner and a car between which people would feel enough privacy to relieve themselves. Usually just pissing in the corner, but often we'd see a turd. Point sometimes people would go try to pass out there where they thought they weren't seen, and get woken up by someone peeing, and it running down over them. Point then there was the incident. What happens when a rather large, rather drunk lady try climbing the pole and pissing inside the pole itself? The bolts rip, put of the wall, the pole bends, she slips and goes head first to the concrete, but her pants are down and get caught. So she's hanging upside down on the pole, still pissing, and with enough alcohol in her system the sudden movement made her blood pressure lower, and she passes out. And then comes the turd. She's hanging upside down, mostly naked, covered in piss, and a long streak of sheet down her back, unconscious when the paramedics arrived. They get her down, she wakes up, panics and runs. Forgetting her pants are still on the pole. Paramedics and security are left scratching our heads. I had to fill out the incident report. Point this time they took the sign itself and put it right onto the wall, like they should have the first time. Point DL, doctor, lady hangs upside down, passes out, pisses herself, sheets herself, then runs away naked. Obligatory, not the guard, but 4 of us had to spend the night in Manchester airport. A friend was flying out at 7 o'clock, so check in at like 05:30/06:00, and the first train didn't get there until 7:15 or something. None of us drove, so we had to get the train that got in at 2300 hours and spend the night there. One of us turned up wearing a Hawaiian shirt, cat ears on an Alice band, and a cat tail on his belt. We spent the first few hours fully exploring the airport. Everything was shut, but there was a TV in the foyer showing hot shots. Part Dukes. At about 3 o'clock we started racing along the concourse. One on the regular floor, one on the travelator going away from us, one on the travelator going towards us. There was much falling over, especially when you hit the end of one of the travelators going as fast as you could, and there was a sudden transition in what the ground was doing. Throughout the whole thing someone kept coming onto the tannoy wherever we happened to be and meowing at us, or laughing when we fell over. When we got the train back in the morning a guy stepped onto it and exclaims it's the cat boy, and then gets his radio out and radios his mates presumably in security and says, guys, cat boy's on the train, and then comes and shakes my mate's hand. It was ace. I worked the 3rd shift at a factory that makes engine parts for tractors. Most of the building is factory, but about a third of it is offices on several floors. At night, these offices are empty after 0000 point, so I'm working with a pretty nifty system that alerts the viewer when there's movement in a camera's field, and then puts a green box around whatever moved when you review it. First couple of nights I get the odd something moved note in a couple of the offices, but figure it was tracking light moving from passing traffic, since when I look there's never anything there. Eventually I figure out the review movement alert feature and start checking it regularly. Turns out I was right. Light moves across the wall from headlights outside. System highlights it. Then about the 4th time I check it out, the box isn't tracing the wall. It's following something in the room for a few feet. Small box indicating something roughly the size of a child. What the fuck? I say. It's too dark to see what it is on the screen, so I head up to check it out. No one upstairs. Look under desks to see if maybe someone is pulling an all-nighter and sleeping in the office. Empty. Mildly disconcerting, but I figure it's a glitch or something. Or maybe that's as small as the motion tracking boxes get, and it was a fat as rat. But I do my due diligence and ring the account manager. He informs me that there is a night vision setting. Oh, Okay, I'll let you know if I find anything point. So I find it in the vision settings and switch it on. Now everything is in hues of green, black, and white. Super clear. Boy howdy is technology. Key movement alert gotcha beach. Except no one is there. The screen just shows an empty cube farm. So I play the movement review. And watch what was a perfectly stationary chair roll out and away from one of the cubes. I'm sorry. I work for insert company name security, not Ghostbusters. And this isn't just one chair. Checking the older footage from the last few nights I've worked, it's been several chairs, things rolling off of desks, and some strange fellow who appears to fall through the floor. Wait, what was that last one? One of the shots is a man, just standing there, and all of a sudden he falls backwards, slinks away like a shadow. Aha. MHMM. Okay, yeah, sure. Fuck this sheet. So I ring the account manager and try to communicate my findings in a voice that does not convey madness or drug use point. And then he asks me what time I saw movement. I check the logs on the flagged incidents. All at half past the hour 0030, 0130, 0230, etc. Oh, that's just the reverse osmosis system turning over, he says. It's right under the offices in the factory, he says. Causes vibrations that make chairs and sheet move around, he says. Sounds reasonable. But what about Pennywise disappearing into the floor? Says I don't know. Go check it out. Click says he point fac. So I grab my baton of steely resolve, and my handcuffs of only works on mortal creatures. Why the hell am I bringing these? Holy shit, I'm going to die, and head out. I head upstairs. Go to the window that the man was staring out of. I see now what he saw. The sight that so entranced him. The empty North End parking lot. I turn around, tracing in my mind the path he took as he made good his escape. My eye falls upon a figure lying upon the floor. I move forward, baton raised above my head. Sir, I say. Sir, identify yourself. Are you in need of medical assistance? Suddenly the figure stirs and stands before. I do need something, he says. His voice is watery and raspy. I don't have any small bills for the vending machine. As he stands taller, and finally towering over me. My God, no. Says I. He extends a large flipper to me. I'm gonna need about $350, TLDR. Anyone got change? Worked law enforcement in the worst projects in my city. I've seen everything imaginable. I should write a book. Point 1 New Year's Eve we got all these calls for multiple gunshots. That's normal. Well, a little trick in law enforcement is that on New Year's Eve you don't get shot. Especially in the worst projects in the city. Why? Because the police everywhere have their hands full and won't respond for backup, and the same with the ambulances. So get shot equals no help equals bad day. So we were in an empty church lot when the calls came. While it sounded like a third world shithole with gunshots going off in about 50 directions at least. This happened for over an hour straight at midnight. Well, one of the things caught on the footage, when we later watched, was some genius in a ghetto blaster took professional fireworks, stuck them in a cardboard box, lit them, went onto the main drag speeding down the street with a few dozen gigantic fireworks blasting out to the moonroof. Then there was the usual dozens of vids of guys standing outside their project housing with automatic rifles, things like Axe and Rs, with boxes of ammo shooting them. We got dozens of calls like, oh my god, they're just reloading and shooting up into the air. I have kids. This is the 5th time I called. Ma'am, it's New Year's, and we are backed up on calls, sitting here in this church lot. Basically I wanted to say I have kids too, motherfucker, and showing up to a scene with multiple rifles, while armed with a pistol is the exact thing you don't do now. Unless someone was shot we don't go, and on that day we'll give plenty of time for the suspects to leave the scene before we get there. Point never get your shot on eye. So I'm a chef, and it has always been a running joke that you know a guy who knows a guy who faked a squid tube. Possibly you do, but it's all fun talk in the kitchen to get you through the shift, amongst a various array of spontaneous jibber jabber that from the outside just sounds ridiculous. My kitchen hand at the time was only of the age of about 17, but well versed in the art of taking drugs. As he worked better on drugs than sober, we quite often turned a blind eye, as long as he was functional. One day he came in tripping a bit hard on acid, so as a joke I crumbed a piece of cardboard and deep fried it, served it to him with gravy, chips and salad, and told him it was a beef snitty. Anyway, comes back and tells us it's the best beef snitty he has ever had and gets straight to work. This was funny enough in itself, and I felt a little bad, but not enough to tell him then and there. A couple of hours later, the faking a squid tube convo comes up, as it does about once a fortnight at the end of our shift. The kitchen hand is within earshot and hears it probably for the 10th time. We knock off and I go to one of the bars in the establishment to have a few beers. My manager comes out midway through my 20 beer and shouts through laughter, "Chef, come to the office and watch this." Through the CCTV we see the chefs leave the kitchen. Kitchen hand goes to a service fridge, grabs a squid tube and takes it to the dishwasher, puts it through a cycle of the dishwasher and takes his pants off. In his underwear, turns and stares directly at the camera and decides I will go to the cool room, presumably where there is no cameras in his addled mind, closes the door and sticks his dick in the squid tube. My manager has watched all this and decides it is now time to intervene and runs into the cool room, catching him full in the act. The kitchen hand legs it out the cool room, trips over his underwear still around his ankles and hits his head on a bench and dazed himself. 5 minutes later security arrives and escorts him off premise. Anyway, had to do an extra 2 hours till the next kitchen hand rocked up, but well worth it for the story. Never thought I would ever see it with my own eyes. I wasn't security at the ShopRite I worked at in my town when I was 17. I was a stock clerk in the non-foods aisle. Toothbrushes, shampoos, toilet paper, tampons, etc. One night, about an hour before we closed, which is when our more peculiar customers chose to do their food shopping, I got called into the security office, where there was a wall of about 15 to 20 TVs which shows the security camera feeds throughout the store. The security guard who I was friendly with told me to watch one TV which showed the security feed of my aisle. "Just take a second to watch what just happened right behind you," the security guard said to me with a grin on his face. There I was packing out toothbrushes when a middle-aged woman strolled up behind me to where the tampons were directly opposite of the toothbrushes. The woman started opening a tampon box. She took out a tampon, opened the packaging, looked around, squatted and seemingly inserted the tampon into, well, we are all smart people here on Reddit. All of this happened right behind me, completely unbeknownst to me. I was appalled. The security guard, at this point hysterical, laughing at my complete naiveness, said, "How on earth did you not realize this was happening directly behind you?" In complete disgust I said, "Bloody hell, I have no idea." We laughed about it for another couple minutes until he had to call the woman in to choose between paying triple the amount of the cost of the box of tampons or wait for the police to come. That was by far the most interesting job I've ever had in terms of insane customers. Also watched a man walk throughout the store leaving a trail of feces on the floor behind him. But that's a story for another day. From 2005 I started working as a CCTV operative for a UK retailer, and what shortly followed my new appointment to the job will stick with me as one of my life's most legendary tales that I take great enjoyment from sharing with new friends over the dinner table. Point: picture the summer of 2005 in southwest England on your typical high street on the day of a carnival procession to celebrate the beginning of the local fun fair. Crowds line the street waiting with police officers lining the route. I'm sat at my post in the CCTV office monitoring the shop floor while working in tandem with a security officer who, for the purpose of this story and his identity, I shall call Matt. Now Matt was your get up and go get 'em guard whom relished in bringing down the light-fingered dishonest members of society who think they can help themselves to our goods without consequences, and who works with other guards in town as comrades in arms in a mutual assistance way that you would expect. Now Matt had just been called by the security from a supermarket across the street to deal with a prolific shoplifter who was none too happy about being detained while I held down the fort. Things were seriously quieter than normal as everyone was outside for the parade. Point: then on walks a chap who could have played a hobbit or dwarf in Lord of the Rings. He must have been 4 feet something. He walks past a young lady with a little girl holding her hand and the grill then sees this man and tugs on her mother's arms and points at the short man. At this moment I'm called on the radio by Matt to tell me grand tales of how great his arrest was in the supermarket. What happened next was like a lion having an antelope land in its den. She flew at him and landed a punch square in the back of his head. Staggered, the small chap flees in terror towards the DIY section with the enraged lion lady in hot pursuit. I spot him run and cower behind a pillar in an arrow aisle with wallpaper in. She runs past, not seeing him as he then backtracks but is seen. She flies at him again and throws him like the Hulk into the shelving, demolishing part of the shelf with wallpaper and debris flying around and part of the fixturing collapsing. I'm sat there in disbelief at what I'm witnessing with my head at a 45-degree angle, wide-eyed with my radio at an opposite angle in my hand, with Matt wallowing on and on about how great his stop was and not shutting his face up while I'm watching a real-life Avengers City battle take place on my shop floor. I'm the new guy. I have no physical experience in dealing with this in person and would be crushed by these two if I intervened. He then finally mercifully ceases transmitting and I'm like, Matt, shut the hell up and get over here. I have a dwarf being pummeled by Xena warrior princess. That was over a town link citywide radio connected to every shop and the police point. He quips back, stop winding me up, mate. I like a laugh but that's too much. I tell that I'm serious and he needs to get in here right. Got him. Now. Meanwhile, Jimmy and Xena have been penned in by staff working delivery stock from caged in a makeshift cordon, or as I called it, a battle arena. Xena has picked up Jimmy, who is now having his face pummeled as she death chokes him. Suddenly Matt thundered into the store with 8+ police who had lined the street outside for the parade, and they zergrush the pair and split them up. The small chap is taken to one side and has a police officer behind and in front of him. He then, and I kid you not, tries to run away under the legs of the police officer. He was promptly taken down by the other officers, cuffed and carried out. Xena was also arrested. Later, the superintendent, or whatever his title was, enters my office with what looked like half the constabulary to witness the Marvel Thor was the CCTV tape. They were literally rolling on the floor in fits of hysterical laughter and all crowding around like 5-year-olds beholding some sacred new thing never seen before in human history. Then the tape reached its end and the head officer ejected it and said, I'll have that. Before I could make a copy. I knew from that day forth I was in the right job. I asked the staff later if they knew what triggered it. Apparently the woman was yelling to everyone that she wanted them to know that he had abused her daughter. If it was true, then perhaps this was his karma. Worked night shift security for 6 years straight a while back, so there's more than a few stories. My post was a government building right downtown, so lots going on at all hours. 3 events stick out more than the others. Quite a long read, but hopefully it'll be worth it. The first is pretty tame, but there was a 24-hour convenience store down the road, so naturally there would be people coming and going all the time, back and forth. On one really quiet night, I spot this busty older lady walking toward the corner store passing by the building's main entrance. Nothing out of the ordinary, except she was wearing a very low-cut top that seemed not to fit very well. Probably 5 minutes later, she's walking back the other way, and as I pan the camera I see her reaching into her top and pulling out about 4 bottles of mouthwash. She cracks one open and starts chugging it like she's in a Coke commercial. So turns out her weird fitting top and large jugs came in handy that night. Second is weird, but memorable. I was panning the cameras around the main entrance as I always did, and probably 3 AM, I see this dark figure laying down by the entrance. I went out there and saw this homeless dude passed out. No big deal. Try to wake him up. Hey buddy, move it along will ya? Hey. Nothing. Try clapping a few times, stopping my foot. Nothing. Is he dead? Is this a dead guy? Tried a few more minutes with no response. Fine, I'll call the cops. We weren't paid enough to get into any serious danger. I call 911 and tell them there's a unconscious male in front of the building. I stress the word unconscious as to not create a panic. The building had some pretty sensitive info kept on file. Next thing I know, there's 3 police cruisers, 2 fire trucks and an ambulance. Turns out the dude was just really wasted. I had to explain to my supervisor the next morning why there was such a sheet storm. Third one is pretty easy. Woman took a giant sheet in front of the building Just looked around, pulled down her pants, and went to town. So there you have it. I worked a front desk at an apartment building. I had this guy acting really weird, maybe 19, come to my desk. Said he just needed to check on his friend. He said he'd visited her before and knew her floor, but didn't remember her apartment number. I asked for her name and he wouldn't give it to me. He gave me her birthday and floor, but that was it. He said she was ignoring him and he wanted to talk to her. I refused him for about 20 minutes and that was the end of that. Until I got a call from a resident about a guy that had been watching her building all day. I checked the cameras and this guy had been standing outside of the building he thought she lived in all day. In the rain. He just had this bright blue umbrella and would walk through the parking lot, staring at the building. Every 30 minutes or so he would go in and take the elevator to the top floor and check every floor of the building. I finally found his card he was using to get in the building, and it wasn't his. He had stolen it from a friend. I checked the file of that apartment and this guy had been denied residency in our apartments. I checked his Facebook page and my heart sunk. It was him posing with various handguns and assault rifles. I immediately called the police who found him and talked to him. He was completely hysterical and refused to leave the premises. Mind you, this was a kid who was maybe 5'3" and 140. The cops one point I finally found out who he was looking for, and he was looking at the wrong building. Thank God. I called and warned her, and she said they had been on one date and she wasn't interested. It was so scary, because I was only 19-year-old girl in a security/receptionist position, and I was in charge of the situation. I had plans to lock myself in the bathroom and call the cops if he came back. It was so scary. TLDR stalker in apartment building looking for a girl ghosting him after a date. He didn't even live there and was a gun enthusiast. Worked maintenance at an apartment complex. Had a foul odor in an elevator one morning. Went back to check security footage from the night before and see two homeless people having sex in the elevator. Have also seen video of people defecating in the stairwell, throwing up in the main entrance, and placing full bags of garbage in the stairwell so they don't have to carry it out to the dumpsters. Different apartment complex. Watched this one with the police. Got a call to the emergency line one night when two bodies were discovered behind the fence around our dumpsters. On the video footage, a man, jealous husband, had apparently come home early from work and thought a second guy, victim, was leaving his apartment, and his wife, at 2 a.m. The first guy gets out of his car and starts firing a handgun at the victim. Victim ducks behind a car and runs behind the fence surrounding the dumpster. Jealous husband follows him in and completely unloads his gun on the guy. The last shot apparently ricocheted into jealous husband's face. They both died before police arrived. The victim was a neighbor, leaving his own apartment, doors side by side, heading to work. Different apartment complex. Found a deer head in the grass in front of a building one morning. No body, just the head. Back to the security footage. Because of the blind spots in the camera we could only see, at around midnight the night before, a couple of guys carrying a dead deer from the parking lot toward the entrance. A young kid, maybe 4 years old, holds the entrance open, and they carry the deer inside to the main hallway, head still attached. No cameras in the building at this place. Only exterior cameras. The footage never shows them leave. We didn't recognize the men or the little boy, and we never found out how the head ended up in the grass, or what happened to the body. Same complex as the homeless elevator search event. Had a soldier who was convinced his wife was cheating on him, and asked us to review the footage and tell him if any men had been at his apartment the night before while he was on overnight duty. We told him no at first, but he came back later claiming things were missing from his apartment, so we were obligated at that point. This was a student housing complex with study rooms in each building, with couches, tables, and chairs, and large whiteboards on the walls. We reviewed the footage, and, while no one went into his apartment, literally 20 minutes after he left for work, 4 men and 2 women showed up and knocked on the door. This was fairly late into the night. They all walked to the study room in the building and had a massive orgy for over 2 hours. During the 2 hours, several other people came and went, and his wife was there the whole time. We watched her literally have sex with 9 different men. None of the staff who watched had the heart to say anything or the legal ability. We simply told him that we reviewed the footage and no one went into his apartment after he left. They stayed together for about 10 months after that, until she had the baby. The baby was black. They were both white. Last one. Other maintenance guy comes in one morning with a wild story about how he got an emergency call at about 1 AM from someone saying they were locked out of their apartment. He shows up with keys to let them in, and it was 3 college-age girls, one of them completely naked, all of them completely drunk off their ass. The guy claims he unlocked the door and helped the 2 clothed girls drag their naked friend inside and got puked on in the process. He says he then left to go home and shower. Obviously, we went to the cameras. What he made sound so simple and quick was actually about a 30-minute ordeal trying to get the naked girl into the apartment. At one point he gets thrown up on, all over his jeans, and eventually everyone goes inside. He's in there for about 5 minutes and the door closes. He walks back out nearly 4 hours later, wearing clean pants. He was terminated that morning. I worked loss prevention at a mall for a while. Some teenagers having sex in the baby department. They were walking around the store, grabbing each other sexually as they walked around. Eventually they came to a stop in the baby department and had a go at it. Had to break them up. It was weird browsing the cameras one day and notice a streak of brown paste on the floor. The streak went from the second floor bathroom to the escalator, down to the first floor, through home supplies, through the healthy living section, through tools and hardware, and out the very back exit of the store. As you can probably guess, it was sheet. Went back on tape and saw that an older man did this. He walked out of the bathroom on the second floor and had a trail of sheet running out of the bottom of his pants. It wasn't a little amount. It was a solid paste of sheet throughout the entire store. This was one of the things that made me quit. Janitors mysteriously all vanished and they forced me, the security guy, to clear it up. We literally lost a $3K television while I was cleaning it up. 2 people walked out with it. Management then tried to blame that on me as well. Greater than sign. We had a guy come in and take a set of kitchen tools and plates. He did it so casually that it just looked weird. No hesitation. He didn't stake it out beforehand. He just walked in, saw it, grabbed it, walked out. Then he came back in and did it again. So I sent my team downstairs to sit at the exit and wait for him. He managed to take the second set and came back in for a third. This time, the team was ready for him. The big member of our team was 280 pounds of pure Samoan. When our Samoan went to grab the guy threw our teammate across the floor like he was a ragdoll. I jumped out of my seat. I was ready to run downstairs, but couldn't really believe what I saw. We had 2 other guys there that tried to detain the suspect, and they were tossed aside as well. I called the police and ran downstairs. It took 4 of us to hold him down and handcuff. We normally never have to use handcuffs. After verifying his ID, we informed the police of who he is. We are told to take extreme caution and to keep him in cuffs. Police show up and take him away. Turns out he was on a ton of drugs. Everything from speed to heroin to PCP to whatever. He had a huge file on record and a ton of warrants. This one lady that worked home supplies was a little hard to work with. She took all the rules way too literal and would call security for everything. She could have her shoe untied and would call us to watch her post on camera while she bent over to tie her shoe. One time, there was kind of a rude customer. We could visually, no audio, see that they were a little upset at our worker. They kept making hand gestures and you could see there was a conflict. The customer then takes their baby out of their cart, takes off the baby's diaper, throws the open diaper at our employee, then starts whipping the baby's ass on the counter, all before flipping off our employee and walking out the store with a naked baby. But we're not supposed to apprehend children under a certain age, or if they stole items not worth a certain amount. Some people know this. We literally couldn't touch someone if what they took was less than $25. So we would get smarter adults that would come in and take a $20 item, then leave, come back in, repeat. We literally couldn't touch them. Going off the last story, same rules apply. We had an 8-year-old running in and taking toys, then running out. We can't apprehend him, and if his parents are outside of the store, we can't technically apprehend them either. The kid was only taking small toys at first, but eventually he started making his way towards the electronics department and started taking games and random electronics. We can't touch him, but he wasn't stopping. So we went outside the store to see if his parents were around or something. We found out that the kid was taking video games from our store, running them to his uncle, who was then selling the games to GameStop. We still had no jurisdiction and couldn't do anything to them. My boss went over and started yelling at the uncle for being a horrible guardian and all this other stuff. We couldn't do anything else though and had to walk away. High school kids came onto my facility while security gates were open and proceeded to party in an out of the way parking lot. Eventually they started doing donuts and got their stuff hung up on a sturdy wooden guardrail, damaging their car and the guardrail badly. This was on a weekend when the place was empty, so they eventually got the car unstuck and left. This is where the story gets good. The next day, they decided to come back in a different vehicle to survey the damage to the guardrail. Except they got locked into the facility this time. Cue a 45-minute highlight reel of high school stupidity. They panicked when they realized the gates had locked behind them and tried ramming the gate. They succeeded only in smashing the headlights of the car and peeling the hood back a little. They then found a rope in their trunk and tried to pull the gate open. This time, the back bumper of their car came off. After several hilarious attempts sometime shortly after this, the local PD and our facility super met them at the gate. They tried to say they panicked because the gate was closed, etc. Cops asked about the previous day's incident and the kids knew they were faked and spilled the beans. Plus it was all on video. A $12,000 in damages to the facility plus whatever damage their cars sustained. Not security, but it so occasionally have to review our camera footage for management. We had a period of time several years ago where the milk bottles we ordered for the office kept getting smashed. This is in the UK. Milk and tea is serious business, so I go to our camera system, pull up our camera facing onto the car park and front door. We go to the time the company delivers the milk and the problem is solved. Van comes to a screeching halt outside our office. The driver dumps the crate of glass bottles onto the ground. You could almost hear the clinking of the glass over the silent feed. Then proceeds to kick the crate of milk bottles like he was kicking the goal that wins the FA Cup. The 25 yards or so to our front door, then speeds off. The camera is set to time lapse, so we only get one frame every second or so it looks even quicker. Once my manager and the big boss pick their jaws up off the ground, the big boss says, "I'll handle this," and immediately goes to his office to make the call. We could hear the shouting from the other side of the building, but not the words. The big man comes out around an hour later and says to us we won't be using them again, and tells his PA to find another supplier. The kicker? The driver who kicked the crate over to our door was the boss of the delivery company who'd been filling in for lack of drivers for a couple of weeks and had denied everything. He changed his tune quick when we offered to send the camera footage over to them as proof. Video went into the department's Hall of Fame alongside other silly things we've been involved with over the years. I used to work in labor relations at a public transit district. My job was to investigate and discipline bus drivers who had complaints filed against them. Modern buses have about 9 cameras, covering virtually every part of the bus, inside and out. It was amazing, but the drivers would totally forget they were on camera point, so I have many stories. Probably the best was one of our more unique drivers, a transsexual, man to woman, about 6 feet 1 inch tall, maybe 130 lbs. A very husky and butch drunk woman gets on the bus with a big gulp soda. The driver tells her she can't bring the soda on the bus. She gets angry, and they exchange words. Finally, she grabs for the string of beads the driver is wearing around her neck, and rips them off her chest. The driver then gets furious, decks her, sits on top of her chest on the bus floor, and pounds her in the face a couple of times. We fired the driver, since she way overreacted. But I couldn't help but notice, rail thin male to female transsexual that she was, how damn well she could handle herself. Tagline. The driver files for unemployment, and we tried to deny her claim, so I'm the poor slob that gets sent to her appeal hearing, to keep her from getting her money. I even show the administrative law judge the video of the driver punching the customer. Nevertheless, the judge awards the driver her unemployment, noting that she is so thin and feminine, she could not possibly have done the big butch woman any real harm. And the driver sued us for wrongful termination. We won that one. Worked as a night dispatcher for police on the state college campus I went to for undergrad. I didn't usually watch the cameras much, except when I was really bored, because nothing much ever happened. But one night I got a call from my counterpart at the private school across the street to let me know that they'd had a report of a naked man running down the street towards us. So I radio the nearest officer and let him know to keep his eyes out and get on the cameras to give him updates if I see anything. A minute later, this huge, hairy, half-naked, wearing shorts, no shirt, and extremely bloody man runs into view on the quad, then stops and just stands there for a minute. The officer is right around the corner and comes into view, shouts something, and the bloody dude runs off into some tall bushes. The officer goes into, I can't really see everything, but based on the top of the bushes moving it's some sort of cat and mouse game going on in there. Finally, the bloody dude takes off out of the bushes, across the quad, and into the graveyard on the other side of campus, and we never saw him again. Don't know exactly what happened to him, but we learned that he was a veteran with some mental issues that more or less escaped from the VA hospital down the street. Hope he turned out alright, but that was definitely the most exciting / weird / scary thing that ever happened while I worked there. There was one time that a suspected murderer was chased into the graveyard by the city police, and they put campus on lockdown and got helicopters after him and stuff, but I wasn't on duty then. Never found that guy either. There's some good hiding places in that graveyard. I worked at Major as a plainclothes store detective. We had this very well-dressed clean-cut black male that was coming in our store nearly every day, walking around for about an hour and then leaving. Mind you, this is in a really rough side of town, so he kind of stuck out. After several weeks of this, we still could not catch him doing anything illegal. One day we were watching him, and we thought he had made us, so we went back to the security room and just watched him via camera. We then watched him proceed to stalk up behind probably a 75-year-old lady with a granny fro, and stick his hand down his pants and start masturbating behind her. He would even go so far as leaning way down behind her to look up her winter coat at her, but while he is masturbating, every time she would turn around to look, because she heard him, or whatever, he would kind of side scoot Scooby-Doo style around the other side of her, and she never even knew he was there. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. Needless to say, we watched him finish up and walk over to brand new rack of towels and wipe his hands several times up and down the towels. Then he left. After that we kept trying to catch him again and get police there quickly enough, but being on the poor side of town it usually is a 45-minute response time. About a month later one of our fellow store detective caught him doing it on the rich side of town at another chain of our store. Needless to say, the police there was there in under 5 minutes and caught him with a bottle of Vaseline in his pocket, his hand covered in Vaseline, and at least slapped him with a disturbing the piece or something. Make sure to wash anything you buy at a retail store before using it, people. I work doing maintenance on highway equipment in Miami. I have access to most of the security cameras along the road. One morning I found a vehicle abandoned at an unmanned toll plaza. This happens often, so not a big surprise. Typically people get stranded and come back for their cars later. I reviewed the video and saw a couple pull up in the vehicle with a woman in the back seat. The couple pulled in and immediately went behind the toll bunker and went right at it. The woman completely took off her pants and just let this man go to town on her. After a few minutes of this, the woman walks back to the car, pants in hand. The second woman gets out and starts walking behind the bunker. On her way there she reaches under her dress between her legs and pulls off her thong and just drops in on the ground. She goes around the building and starts blowing the guy. They eventually move on to faking, and I guess she was loud because the other woman got back out of the car and came over to watch. The guy notices she's there watching and starts going nuts, yelling and throwing his arms in the air telling her something, while the woman getting fake just kept going, ignoring everything that was happening. Finally the pantsless woman watching says something that really sets this guy off. He pushes the woman he was faking on the ground and starts running full speed after the first woman out toward the car, pants around his ankles looking like he wanted to kill her. After picking herself up, the woman in the dress runs over to the car, grabs the keys out of the ignition and takes off. The other woman and the man chasing her were off camera during all of that, and I don't know what happened there, but the man came back to the car, saw the keys were gone, looked all over the place for them. After giving up, he casually cranks up the windows, locks the doors and walks away. I notified my boss, we watched the video, laughed thoroughly, and went to the scene. The car had a plate that was expired by over a year. It was filled with stripper clothes, condom and McChicken wrappers. We don't just want to tow everyone immediately, but due to the expired plates we called FHP and a tow truck. Just got out of work and saw the craziest thing today. So I'm obviously a security guard. I work at the new bus/train station in Western Mass. My city is pretty bad, highest crime rate in Massachusetts, so a ton of crazy shit happens all the time. Our station has Amtrak police on duty 24/7. Local cops come by every hour, and then my security company that also monitors everything on camera 24/7. So most people that come to the station are usually well behaved. We have a situation happen every day: overdoses, theft, drunks, etc. But it's rare something really bad happens anyways. Today was a pretty calm day, and it gets a little boring when things don't happen. So I decided to go through our computer's incidents folder and see what I can watch to pass time. I went through a ton of videos and most of them were just odds, but the last video was insane. A few months ago, before I was working for the company, this guy robbed a bank a few blocks away from the station and decides to try and flee on an Amtrak train. Of course, police are looking for him, so he's like in a rush. He comes into the station, speed walking by everyone, and purchases an Amtrak ticket in cash, the one he just stole from the bank. As he begins to climb the stairs, the cops arrive on the scene and run through the station. They notice the man who fits their description walking up the stairs towards the Amtrak tracks, so they chase him and ask him to stop. The man stops, turns, and begins acting confused. The cop explains the situation, tells him he fits the description, and he just wants to ask some questions. So the man agrees to follow him, and the cop turns his back and walks ahead. All of a sudden, the guy turns around and bolts up the stairs. The cop hears him, turns, and begins chasing him, but running a lot faster, since he isn't carrying a duffel bag filled with $10K cash on him. The suspect notices the cop is catching up, drops the bag, turns around and pulls a gun out. Obviously, the cop draws his weapon immediately but surprisingly doesn't faking shoot. The suspect isn't shooting either, he's just aiming it at him and slowly backing up towards the top of the steps to the platform. There's like this intense stare down, guns drawn, cop yelling and suspect swearing profusely. All of a sudden, he drops the gun as well and runs on the Amtrak train tracks and the cop chases him, but still not shooting. He chased him, gun in hand, caught up and eventually tackled him. Few seconds later, an army of backup is on the tracks and they take the guy in point. Apparently the guy's gun was fake. He just used it to rob the bank. But I'm still shocked that the cop didn't shoot. Most cops would have shot as soon as someone draws and aims a gun in their direction. It's like this cop was trained for a situation like this and knew he was bluffing. Either way, that's a really good cop. Courageous, well trained, and caught the bank robber without anyone getting injured. His only fuck up, turning his back on the guy. That video was the best 5 minutes of my life though. After the time I lost my virginity, made me decide I want to take my talents to South Beach. JK. I wanna become a cop now though. This one was me on cam with a buddy watching me. I had to do an intake from the local cops into our facility. Point guy in his 50s, I believe to be drunk, comes in and says he has cancer, and my usual response, once I can get all your information I can send medical over here. He says he has to use the bathroom. Right before he had to change to the oranges I already checked all his pockets and everything. So I say alright, put him in the cell and go get all the stuff ready for his stay. Look in the window before I open the door. Everything seems normal. So I call for the door to open. I open the door and the dude has his own dirty diaper in his hand. Point, and there I was, yelling, "Sir, please drop the diaper." and all I can think is oh man, if I pepper spray this dude I'm gonna be here for 4 hours after my shift doing reports. Okay, on to the actual cam. Well, being understaffed at the time, my buddy proceeded to get a fun little show of me and this dude taking turns trying to bluff each other back and forth across intake, me with pepper spray and him with a dirty diaper. Luckily when I opened the cell door I put his bean on front of the door to keep it open and eventually one step at a time got him to back far enough into the cell that I slammed the door closed and look at the camera with a what the fuck expression, and I hear on the intercom, "Yo, was that dude about to attack you with a diaper?" And him like, "Fuck you dude, haha." In hindsight, I believe this was before I got my hepatitis vaccine and was lucky it ended peacefully. Evenly position 2 racks in the middle of the oven and preheat to 375 degrees F on convection setting if you have it. Line to baking sheets with parchment paper or silicone sheets. If you only have one baking sheet, let it cool completely between batches. Put the butter in a microwave safe bowl, cover, and microwave on medium power until melted. Alternatively, melt in a small saucepan. Cool slightly. Whisk the sugars, eggs, butter, and vanilla in a large bowl until smooth. Whisk the flour, baking soda and salt in another bowl. Stir the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients with a wooden spoon. Take care not to overmix. Stir in the chocolate chips or chunks, scoop heaping tablespoons of the dough onto the prepared pans. Wet hands slightly and roll the dough into balls. Space the cookies about 2 inches apart on the pans. Bake until golden, but still soft in the center, 12 to 16 minutes, depending on how chewy or crunchy you like your cookies. Transfer hot cookies with a spatula to a rack to cool. Serve point, store cookies in a tightly sealed container for up to 5 days for a rocky road bar. Lightly butter a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. Make the batter as per cookie recipe and fold in 1 cup chopped walnuts along with the chocolate chips. Spread batter in prepared pan. Bake until the edges are light brown and the batter sets, about 45 minutes. Cool slightly and cover surface with 4 cups marshmallows and 1 cup chocolate chips. Broil at least 8 inches from the heat until marshmallows turn golden brown, about 2 minutes. Keep an eye on the marshmallows and turn the pan frequently, they go from golden to char in a wink. Cool, cut and serve. Not security, but worked in a strip mall with access to the cameras. I checked them. If there was a problem, tenant comes in to say, "Did you know that there was a car crash in the parking lot?" I walk over to the parking lot in question, and there was 3 cars, just smashed to bits. I pull the video from the system. 1 car speeding out of control, and it oversteers onto the lawn of the strip mall, and predictably, oversteers when it does the 90-degree turn into our parking lot. It only stops for a moment after that almighty crash, taking out 3 parked cars at once, and then the driver drives off. It was so hard that it moved all 3 cars out of their spaces. Talking to the police officer later, she tells me that this incident was probably connected to another one, making me think it was a joyride/stolen vehicle. Funny thing was the car lost its plates, making the cops' lives much easier. Also funny was one of the tenants swinging that he drove his wife's car, and that was one of the cars that got smashed. In the summer, there are math/language tutoring classes in that mall. Hence, the kids get stupid loud. One day, I was wondering what the wailing noise was, and it turned out that one of the shopkeepers had their clothing display smashed into by a careless customer. On the video, it showed the customer waiting for his wife and then walking towards her and the shop in question. He continues walking, and it looks like he accidentally veered into the display. He couldn't walk in a straight line. From what I gathered from the fuss the wife was making over the husband, probably an insurance grab. Not that weird, I guess, but it was funny. I used to work in security at a small casino. One night apparently 2 men, both of which had to be in their 80s, got into an argument at one of the card tables. Without much of an altercation inside, they both got up and walked outside to the parking lot. We caught on camera one old man whooping up on the other like he was a professional damn boxer. I was in my early 20s, 6 feet 3 inches, 275 pounds, built like a linebacker, and watching this 80-year-old man fight made me not want to start shit with him. Then they both came back inside, sat back down. The loser had a black eye, with a little blood coming from his nose and lip, and they both went back to their card game. No other problems were had by those two that night. We had another where we were finding coin cups filled with what smelled like urine all around the casino. Upon me asking about it, I was shown footage of one of the regulars pissing in said cups very inconspicuously and leaving them around the casino. I was told that this person does this often, more so when losing. So when they are playing stay nearby and they will stop. But they wouldn't stop them since they spent so much money at the casino. We had a similar issue to the one above, not caught on camera, where a customer would go into a bathroom stall and paint the walls with her sheet, like she was faking finger painting. Anytime she would lose a lot of money. But she would drop so much money at the casino we were instructed to let her be, and housekeeping would have to clean up her mess. Super late to respond. But one of my clients has a lot of surveillance equipment / cameras in lots of their building, but a lot of the staff don't really know how to use it to dump video, right? So they call on us, people, to dump the video, so it looks / works right on other machines. Egg police point: a person was being evicted and refused to leave, so he barricaded himself in the apartment and police had to force him out. He used bleach / chlorine as a weapon and threw it at the police. When they gained entry he had a knife and went after the police. They shot him and he went to hospital / jail. They wanted video to cover their ass. People escaping from low security jail or a halfway house. Typically they broke the rules, tampering with video cameras, so they can hang out in the bathroom, and they run, since they will be sent back to real jail. Lots of fender bender / car accidents. It's amazing to see how much bullshit people will say if they think they were not caught on video. The last video I dumped was of a person who they found dead. I had to rewind / dump the video of the person who died because they wanted to ensure there was no foul play involved. I bring it back and I see this guy sitting on a bench. Then he slowly slumped a little, like he's super tired. Then he falls over. The sad thing was it was nighttime and no one noticed him for a good 20 minutes to a half hour. The saddest thing was knowing that this person died and only 4 to 5 people witnessed his death. Me, my employee, the director, and the police. It's specialist in CCTV here. We mostly specialize with small hardware stores and thrift stores. I've seen it all, but here are my favorites. A guy was stealing garden gnomes from a small hardware store in bulk by stuffing them down his XXXL pants and walking out. The most hilarious part is that as he walked out of the store, one fell out of his pant leg, which is the only reason why they caught him. A Raps driver was delivering to a hardware store. She was walking to the front door and you see the wind pick up hard. Then, you start seeing gutters and trim fly off the building as she runs to the corner of the front entrance and latches onto a pipe. A tornado went directly through the store and missed her by what looks like a few feet. We actually got this news to their local ABC station and they did a story with her in the store, and our RIPE cameras got a shout out for their quality. A store was having massive shrink, like 20k plus a month, and the owner could not figure out who it was, but he noticed every day for about 10 minutes, the DVR would shut down and come back online. We searched for days as he guaranteed it was something wrong with our unit. We gave him a loaner unit and nonchalantly attached a tiny camera under a desk with some adhesive. Within a few days, he noticed that his 26-year-old son was coming in and skimming from the safe. Not just a couple 100s, but stacks of cash a day. As for the DVR, he would literally pull the breaker for the surveillance room and come back in and turn the system on before it would record. He had to fire his own son, and I'm pretty sure he called the cops and sent him to jail. Not security, but apartment complex maintenance that has security camera access to areas around the clubhouse. When we see fit. One day on the morning walk of the clubhouse for trash and such, we find a beer can on the ground near a treadmill in the gym, with some liquid next to the treadmill on the floor. Nothing we haven't seen before. Still notable and funny to think about who would bring beer to the complex gym. Later that day someone says one of the toilets in the clubhouse, right next to the gym, keeps running and running, so Kawalker checks it out. Someone had put a beer can in the tank, not allowing the flapper to close, so running and running water. Coworker tells me about it because it's funny, and we decide to check the tapes one of the well-known retired used to play in a semi-famous band or something. Everyday drunks had decided he wanted to do some walking on the treadmill, in swim shorts, and an unbuttoned button-up shirt, while drinking a beer. Another guy comes into the gym as this dude is having his walk. Pretty small gym. So drunk guy is walking on the treadmill, goes to take a sip of his drink, swim shorts start to fall off, get about knee high, goes to grab them, trips up, lands on the treadmill, gets kicked off the other end, as out in the air for anyone to see, and spills his beer. Other guy in the gym kinda looks at him for a second, and then gets up, and looks like he checks to see if drunk guy's alright. Drunk guy gets up, puts his pants on, and walks out the door, not to be seen again for the day. His apartment is right around the corner. We laughed so hard about it, and it was embarrassing enough that we never brought it up to him. A few months later the guy was cooking chicken wings in some oil, drunk, falls asleep, oil catches fire, and lights his unit on fire. Sprinklers caught it, but soaked everything in his unit. Poor drunk guy. Hopefully I'm not late to the party. Worked at a cafe/bakery a couple years after high school. Was an opener for a good 2 years. My first year opening my main day to open by myself was Sunday. We had 2 bakers. One that was a guy in his 30s who was super chill, just a guy trying to make an honest living. The other was a guy in his 60s or 70s which lazy eye who would constantly bring these giant Bowie knives with him for protection. One morning I show up and go to open the door, and he had one of his knives on his hip. We had told him repeatedly that we understood he needed protection, but he shouldn't be having them out. All he said was check the cameras. At about 3 AM when a bar in the same shopping center closes, the baker we will call Carl was laying out the bagels when some visually drunk guy shoulder bumps the door open and barges in, tripping into our mop sink. All we see is Carl go into his toolbox full of his baking instrument, grab his knife, and like some sort of movie we see him open his mouth in a yelling fashion. Guy turns around, tries to open the door, but pulling it towards him, and ends up running out to our lobby, running back around to the back and finally pushing the door open, while Cole was chasing him with the knife. He apparently chased him for a good 5 minutes, because he was gone for a good time between running out the door after the guy to the point he got back. I asked him 2 questions. Why didn't you call the cops? Because I can take care of my own problems. What would you have done if you would have caught the guy? Would have called the cops to report I had subdued someone that was breaking and entering. Let's just say nobody really messed with Carl after that. Bonus Carl story. Because I was the Sunday opener, I would always show up an hour after the baker would leave. On a couple of weeks in a row I would go in and it would smell like straight up weed. More so I'm the back than the front. This trend started happening once we hit the colder season in December. I never thought much of it. A lot of people there smoked, and I just figured someone was smoking the shift before, and it was lingering. One Sunday I showed up and noticed that Carl didn't clock out. So I wanted to make sure I got him out in the system at the correct time. So he did complain about us cheating him out of hours. So I checked the cameras. This is when I found out what was going on. As I'm fast forwarding from the time he started to the end, I notice that after he racks the last amount of break in the display, and before he starts to work on pulling out the stuff for the next baker so it can thaw, I see him bust out a small bong. So while he's counting what he needs to pull his tack in, pulls out of his bong in the restaurant. He then cleans it out and packs it out before getting back to work. I go back to the last Sunday and sure enough he is doing the same thing. Go back a Sunday before that and guess what? Also having the same ritual. Most awkward conversation I've ever had with someone about not smoking in the restaurant. He ended up getting suspended for a good 2 weeks. Because what I didn't know is when you change someone's hours on the POS system it will mark it, and the GM will check it to make sure you're not giving or taking hours away from people. I played dumb when they asked if I had seen what they did on the recording. I said no, because I just fast forwarded straight through.